At the beginning of the 21st century, there was a bubble. Not a fun soap bubble meant to entertain small children, nor an annoying sanctimonious bubble inhabited by white liberals. It was
a free market bubble,
which means it was dangerous. A free market bubble is when the price of an investment, like a stock or commodity, rises
unnaturally,
meaning faster than it should. In this case, the bubble was the US housing market. As long as people are charged for the right to exist, housing is a lucrative asset. But it also used to be a stable asset, meaning while the value of your home would surely grow, it would also slowly grow. Yet in the late 20th century, home prices began to rise
unnaturally.
As home prices rose, more people wanted to buy them because they thought their home's price would increase exponentially. This became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people bought homes, the more home values rose. The more home values rose, the more people wanted to buy them. In order to afford more expensive homes, people took out bigger mortgages. Capitalist pigs loved this and wanted to loan more mortgages to more people. But there was a problem.
These rubes don't have enough money to qualify for conventional mortgages. Why are people so poor?
The reason people were so poor was because for 99% of us, wages had stagnated since the 1970s, so fewer people qualified for conventional mortgages. If capitalist pigs were half as smart as they thought they were, they would have raised wages so more people could legitimately afford a house. This would have been a long-term investment that would have yielded a substantial amount in interest and not resulted in a total fiasco. But capitalist pigs are never as smart as they think they are. So instead of making it easier for the working class to afford a house, they made it easier for the working class to borrow money. And thus was born
the subprime mortgage.
The word subprime does not refer to the mortgage itself. It refers to the type of borrower the mortgage was marketed to. Subprime borrowers were those with low incomes and poor credit scores. The type of borrowers banks would normally consider
extremely risky
lending to. But lend they did, imposing a ridiculously high
adjustable interest rate.
Of course, subprime mortgages didn't start off with ridiculously high interest rates. They started off with enticing
teaser rates.
For example, the most common subprime mortgage was the
228 loan,
which offered a low rate for 2 years before hitting borrowers with much higher interest for the next 28. Now, plenty of intelligent poor people were rightly skeptical of subprime mortgages, but capitalist pigs had a very clever argument for this skepticism.
Yes, you'll have to pay higher interest after 2 years, but the home values will keep going up during that time, so you'll have enough equity to refinance your mortgage. Or you can sell your house and make a tidy profit. The market's only going up, baby.
Naturally, capitalist pigs didn't stop there. When erroneous arguments failed, they made subprime mortgage terms, well, downright silly. Some subprime mortgages offered
no down payments.
Others offered 2-year periods of
interest-only mortgage payments.
So for 2 years, subprime borrowers would be paying down their mortgage by $0. While subprime lenders made their mortgage terms impractical, they also lowered their standards for who could borrow a mortgage. In the beginning, they signed up people who had virtually no chance of paying them back. Towards the end, they signed up people who had absolutely no chance. Migrant workers who made less than $12,000 a year and couldn't understand English, let alone the complex terms of a mortgage agreement, became the owners of $500,000 plus homes. It was almost as if banks were underwriting mortgages designed to fail. At this point, you're asking,
why would capitalist pigs lend money to people they knew couldn't pay them back? How does that make sense financially?
Bold of you to assume capitalist pigs know what they're doing. But in this case, there was reasoning behind the madness. Terrible reasoning, but reasoning nonetheless. For you see, subprime lenders had no intention of holding on to their terrible mortgages. They intended to
sell the mortgages
as quickly as possible. If you ever get a mortgage, the thing you should know, but no one will tell you, is that at some point your mortgage will be sold to someone else. A bank has a limited amount of money for mortgage lending. If they lend too much too quickly, they won't have any money for new mortgages. While they wait for the revenue from monthly payments, competing banks will corner the market. So, in order to get the money to keep lending, banks sell your mortgage, usually to larger investment banks. Why do these larger investment banks buy your mortgage? Well, to answer that question, we need to understand
mortgage-backed securities,
a term we're sure fills you with equal parts dread and boredom. But essentially, a mortgage-backed security is another type of investment, meaning investors buy other people's mortgages. And when they own the mortgages, they get the mortgage payments, along with the sweet, sweet interest. Compared to other investments, mortgage-backed securities seem safe. Investors should see a healthy return, and
in theory,
there's a low chance of default because homeowners want to keep living in their homes. Nobody wants to be tortured by their landlords again. Ow! 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 This is why Wall Street banks bought subprime mortgages, turned them into mortgage-backed securities, and told investors they were safe. Except they weren't. Believe it or not, this is the part of the story that really gets complicated. And that's not an accident. Capitalist pigs intentionally made things as complicated and confusing as possible so no one could figure out what the they were doing. But it is important to know what the they did, so to help explain things, we'll use our favorite allegory, the potato. Imagine this potato is a mortgage-backed security, and we're unscrupulous kulaks who sell these potatoes to other peasants. Now, we have two kinds of potatoes. A few prime potatoes that are good, but far more subprime potatoes that are bad. We know these subprime potatoes are bad, but we have no intention of throwing them away. Yet we know if we sold these subprime potatoes by themselves, no one would buy them. I mean, look at this. Would you buy this? Seriously, we're thinking about doing merchandise. Let's put a pin in that and assume peasants are capable of knowing bad potatoes when they see them. How do we sell subprime potatoes? We hide them. We create special planting barrels filled almost entirely with subprime potatoes, with a thin layer of prime potatoes on top to cover them up. To further ensure our potatoes are sold, we go to the regulators responsible for protecting consumers and ask them to give our products a high quality rating. The potato regulators are delighted to give our potatoes a high quality rating. After all, we pay their salaries, so they have a
conflict of interest
that works in our favor. With the blessing of the regulators, we go to all the farmers, and say, see, our subprime potatoes are safe. Sure, there may be a few bad pommes de terres in the barrel, but they're a tiny percentage. Everyone should plant them on their farms, which is exactly what the peasants do. And as always happens when people disregard the welfare of their fellow human beings, an unmitigated disaster unfolds. Because not only do our subprime potatoes not grow, they poison the other, healthier potatoes. In fact, our subprime potatoes are so toxic, they poison the very soil itself so nothing can grow. This is what happened with subprime mortgages, in what can only be described as a
chain reaction of pig.
And because this is hell, let's go over every step of this terrible chain reaction.
1. The housing bubble bursts.
In 2005, the US housing bubble finally burst. Not only did the market stop growing, home prices declined. This was a problem because, as you recall, subprime borrowers took out their mortgages on the belief that home values would continue to increase. When their home values actually dropped, subprime borrowers found themselves
underwater,
meaning the balance of their mortgage was greater than the value of their home. This led to the next step in our chain reaction.
2. Massive foreclosures.
Remember that the 228 loan offered a low teaser rate for 2 years before hitting borrowers with much higher interest for the next 28. Well, by 2008, the 2-year teaser rate was up. Now, subprime borrowers faced exponentially higher mortgage payments. To what should have been no one's surprise, none of these borrowers could afford to pay their mortgage. Without any options, subprime borrowers did the only thing they could. They quit. They filed for bankruptcy, went through foreclosure, or just abandoned their homes. Whatever they did, the end result was the same. Subprime borrowers stopped paying their mortgages, which caused
3. Wall Street bankruptcy.
Without subprime borrowers paying their mortgages, the Wall Street banks that invested trillions of dollars in subprime mortgage-backed securities became the proud owners of literally worthless investments. So, banks on Wall Street went bankrupt. Now, we were all eager to start playing the world's smallest violin for Wall Street, but unfortunately, because of how capitalism is structured, when Wall Street goes bankrupt, it's bad for everybody. Without Wall Street banks, the entire world entered
4. Economic arrest.
Think of our economy like your circulatory system. In order for the body to function, there needs to be a constant flow of blood through all the veins, arteries, and capillaries. If blood stops flowing to the body shuts down rather quickly. Capitalist economies function the same way. In order for the military-industrial complex to keep oppressing us, there needs to be a constant flow of cash. At the heart of this cash flow are the banks in New York, London, Tokyo, etc. These banks pump money into the system and keep the wheels of the economy in motion. Corporations, film studios, and governments only function so long as banks lend them money. So you can imagine how devastating it was when these banks ran out of money. The economic body started shutting down. And in the end, to defibrillate the economic body, the federal government was forced to bail out giant banks deemed too big to fail. And the capitalist pigs who committed so much fraud and caused so much suffering were punished with million-dollar bonuses of taxpayer money. All the while, the proletariats who believed homeownership was the path to prosperity were cast into the bitter cold that makes up the 8th circle of mortgage hell. A terrible story to be sure. But it does beg the question, who on earth could possibly reside in the 9th circle of mortgage hell? The reason we started the Communist Manifesto for Personal Finance was when we looked at other personal finance experts. We realized they had no interest in actually helping other people. What they really wanted was to judge other people. How dare you be so irresponsible with your money, they would cry. Thank white capitalist baby Jesus, I am not a sinner like you. You deserve your eternal torment at the hands of the Lord Free Market, your God. But looking back at mortgage hell, can we really say the people who suffer deserve to suffer? If anyone from the subprime mortgage crisis deserves to be submerged in a river of human excrement, it's the capitalist pigs who committed so much fraud and caused so much suffering. But they weren't. Instead, they were given bonuses for being terrible at their jobs. All the while, the people who actually had subprime mortgages were, and still are, hell for us seems to have always been a contradiction. And despite Signore Alighieri's best efforts, the definition of hell has eluded us. T.S. Eliot said hell is oneself alone. Jean-Paul Sartre said hell is other people. Theologians said hell is the absence of an all-loving, merciful God, ignoring the fact that this all-loving, merciful God created a place of eternal torment for those who have sex before marriage. If there is one common denominator for hell, it's suffering. That's why even though we communists don't believe in God, we do believe in hell. Because we see hell all around us. Hell is going bankrupt because you're sick. Hell is having to choose between being abused by your job or criminalized for being homeless. Hell is your access to justice directly correlating with your income level and inversely correlating with your melanin level. Hell is knowing your income level has nothing to do with how hard you work. Hell is poor people who work 3 jobs being told they're lazy by people who inherited their money. Hell is when sociopaths are not only exonerated, but rewarded for their behavior. Hell is capitalist pigs wasting billions on space travel and immortality while millions of children starve. Hell is nobody batting an eye when corporate CEOs get millions of dollars of taxpayer money, but everybody loses their minds when there's a chance a negligible amount of student loans might be forgiven. Hell is property being more valuable than human life. This is the hell we live in every day. And why you are the last resident of mortgage hell. Why I am the last resident of mortgage hell. Why everyone is a resident of mortgage hell. Because it never was just mortgage hell. It was always capitalist hell. Since we clearly are in hell, it begs the question, do we abandon all hope? If you think things are hopeless, and the only valuable use of your time is to lie down and die, we probably can't say anything to convince you otherwise. And truth be told, we can see where you're coming from. We can't say with any certainty anything will ever get better. But we must ask, comrade, have you abandoned all hope because you really think things are hopeless? Or do you just need an excuse not to try? Because what we can say with absolute certainty is things definitely won't improve if we don't try. Even if the trying is frustrating and it feels like we go backwards more often than forwards, we still must make an effort, because we know this is it. There is no afterlife, hell or otherwise, waiting for us on the other side of death. We have only this life to try and make things a little better for those who come after us. Unlike Dante's Inferno, our hell is not eternal. It had a beginning, and it will have an end. But it is up to us to decide what kind of end it shall be. A renaissance of the human spirit, or a descent into barbarism. The choice is up to you. Although we risk cliché saying it, you are responsible for being the change you want to see in the world. Yes, that change is agonizingly slow, but it is real, and it is always worth fighting for. Whatever your reasons, petty or grand, keep fighting, comrade. As Winston Churchill is probably misquoted as saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. I'm Comrade Rourke, and you are the revolution.